Lysander, and such great names as these. Out of all the world's great heroes, there's none that can compare with the tow row row, row 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 to the British Grenadiers. Those heroes of antiquity ne'er saw a cannonball, or knew the force of power to slay their foes withal. But our brave boys who know it and banish all their fears, with a tow row row, row 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 for the British Grenadiers. Whene'er we are commanded to storm the palisades, our leaders march with fusees and we with hand grenades. We throw the rod that glasses all out the enemy's ears. Sing tow row row, row 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 for the British Grenadiers. And when the siege is over, we to the town repair. The townsmen cry, hurrah, boys, here comes the Grenadier. Here come the Grenadiers, my boys, who know no doubts or fears. Sing tow row row, row 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 for the British Grenadiers. Then let us fill a bumper and drink a health to those who carry caps and pouches and wear the lubid clothes. May they, their commanders, live happy all their years. Sing tow row row, row 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 for the British Grenadiers.
We are the Lexington Historical Society Colonial Singers, and we're doing a few songs from the 18th century that people were enjoying or singing at the time of the American Revolution. That was the British Grenadiers, which is a very popular song with the British Army in the 18th century, and it's still one of the most popular songs in the British Army today. Next, we're going to do a song of the Minutemen. This is written by a New Jersey militiaman in 1777, and you'll hear referred to them as New Jersey boys. It's interesting to note that the attitude towards our noble congressman wasn't exactly complete admiration.
Rise up, brother Minutemen, and let us have a chorus. The braver and the bolder then, the more they will adore us. Our country calls for swords and calls and drums along the battle. Our white friends arm arise to arms, liberty calls to battle. We have some noble congressmen elected for our nurses, and every jolly farmer will assist us with their purses. We let them stay at home, we say, enjoy their lives with pleasure, and we will go and fight our foes and save their lives and treasure. Now to our station let us march, rendezvous with pleasure. We have them like great Minutemen, who serve so great a treasure. We let them see immediately that we are men of metal. We Jersey boys and fear no noise, whatever flinch in battle. And when we do return again, it will be with glory, for them that do remain at home to hear our valiant story. They will draw near and glad to hear the counting of the wonder, and Minutemen the 1 to 10 to bring the Tories under. For they will live and rule the throne, and all his loyal subjects that truly stand for liberty and make those chief objections. For slavish chains we do disdain, likewise popish tyranny, such hellish praise we do defy, and will not yield to any. Let us now not be dismayed, though the Tories should defy us. There is our brave militiamen that surely will stand by us. The Tory brood that hath withstood the great and glorious June, if they advance, we'll make them dance the tune of Yankee Doodle.
After the Boston Massacre in 1770, the British soldiers in Boston were stationed for a time on Castle Island to keep them apart from the colonials until reinforcements could arrive from England. The soldiers weren't too happy about being kept on an island with nothing to do after hours, so they wrote this song expressing what they felt about the simple Bostonians.
You simple Bostonians, I'd have you beware of your liberty tree. I would have you take care, for if we should chance to return to the town, your houses and stores will come tumbling down, very down, 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 very down. If you'll not agree to obey England's laws, I fear that King Hancock may soon get the yaws, but he need not fear, for I swear we will. For the want of a doctor, give him a heart pill, very down, 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 very down. A brave reinforcement we soon think to get, and then we will make you poor pumpkins to sweat. Our drums they will rattle, and then you will run to the devil himself from the side of a gun. Very down, 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 very down. Our fleet and our army, they soon will arrive, and to the bleak island you shall not ascribe. In every house you shall have 3 or 4. Very down, 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 very down, very down, 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 very down.
So, having done a rather loyalist song, we're now going to do America to Arms. This was written, actually published in 1775 by Ezekiel Russell, a printer in Salem, who published the American Gazette newspaper. And interestingly, on July 17th, 1776, he printed the official Massachusetts edition of the Declaration of Independence, as ordered by the Council of the Commonwealth to be sent to towns and other officials for public reading. But the demand for copies was so great, he also printed a commercial edition of the broadside to fulfill the public's desire to buy a copy for their very own.
But only to
Tavern from those on both sides of the issues. In praise of Nottingham Ale, the lyrics appeared in print in 1752, and the tune is a version of the Celtic tune Lily Polera, popular from the 17th century. And if you like, you can join us on the chorus, which goes, Nottingham Ale, boys, Nottingham Ale, the liquor on earth is like Nottingham Ale.
Venus, the goddess of beauty and love, arose from the froth that swam on the sea. The nervous sprang out of the cranium of Jove, and Poinsel and Davis, most authors agree. Great Bacchus, they tell us, that prince of good fellows, was Jupiter's son, great and 10 to my tale. For they who thus chatter, mistake quite the matter, he sprang from a barrel of Nottingham ale. Nottingham ale, boys, Nottingham ale, no liquor on earth is like Nottingham ale. Nottingham ale, boys, Nottingham ale, no liquor on earth is like Nottingham ale. Ye bishops and curates, priests, deacons, and vicars, when once you have tasted, you'll own it is true that Nottingham ale is the best of all liquors, and none understands the good creature like you. It expels every vapor, saves pen, ink, and paper, for when you're a mind in the pulpit to rail. 'Twill open your throats, you may preach without notes, when inspired by offer of Nottingham ale. Nottingham ale, boys, Nottingham ale, no liquor on earth is like Nottingham ale. Nottingham ale, boys, Nottingham ale, no liquor on earth is like Nottingham ale.
Ye doctors who more executions have done, with powder and potion and bolus and pill, than hanging at the altar or soldier with gun, or miser with famine, or lawyer with quill. To dispatch us the quicker, you would give us no liquor, till our bodies consume and our faces grow pale. But find him who pleases, what cures all diseases, with a comforting glass of good Nottingham ale. Nottingham ale, boys, Nottingham ale, no liquor on earth is like Nottingham ale.
Nottingham ale, boys, Nottingham ale, no liquor on earth is like Nottingham ale. Poets who talk of your elegant brook, famed nectar of gods and the juice of the vine, who think none can write, but those who invoke the friendly assistance of one of the nine. Here liquor surpasses the streams of Parnassus, by nectar and muses on which gods regale. Experience will show it, now lightens a poet, like quantum sufficient of Nottingham ale. Nottingham ale, boys, Nottingham ale, no liquor on earth is like Nottingham ale. Nottingham ale, boys, Nottingham ale, no liquor on earth is like Nottingham ale.
We're going to do one that everyone is familiar with, I'm sure, Yankee Doodle. And this is the song that the British wrote to poke fun at the colonists, but the Yankees turned the tables and adopted it for their own. And we'll do a couple verses. They're not so well known, and you can join us on the chorus. And then at the very end, we're going to do the verse that everybody knows. And you can sing along with the whole verse. And here we go.
Father and I went down to camp along with Captain Broody, and there we saw the men and boys as thick as hasty pudding. Yankee Doodle, boom it up, Yankee Doodle dandy, mind the
Sue Rockwell, and it's my pleasure to introduce and welcome you to the Lexington Historical Society special program this evening, Independence Then and Now. The Lexington Historical Society, for those 2 or 3 of you who may not know, is responsible for the stewardship and promotion of Lexington's story throughout history. And we do this through our extensive archives, our programming for all age groups, and our 3 major historic sites, the Buckman Tavern, the Hancock Clark House, and the Monroe Tavern. But we're not all about the Revolution. We have much more to offer, including the fact that we are the birthplace of mid-century modernism. We will shortly, in this building, our depot building, be undergoing a complete transformation. This very space will become an area where we can actually help tell the story of the rest of Lexington with exhibits and other information for those who are tourists and also for people who live here in town. If you're not already a member of the Lexington Historical Society, shame on you. We urge you to consider it. Our members get free admission to all of our historic sites, priority notice and pricing for our programming, and a discount at our museum shop over at Buckman Tavern. More information is available on the back desk, including some information about upcoming mini camps that we will be having for the youngsters this summer. In addition, of course, we're always grateful for any donations that you can give us, particularly as we raise funds for this transformation of the building. So we are grateful that you are here, and we thank you for coming. Now, our program this evening is based on a script developed by Freedom's Way National Heritage Area. It's been refreshed and updated a bit this year by Jay Kaufman and Craig Sandler. If you've never heard of Freedom's Way National Heritage Area, it works in partnership with the National Park Service, particularly with Minuteman National Park. The area includes 45 communities in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. It connects the people, places, and communities of the heritage area through preservation, conservation, and educational initiatives that protect and promote the area. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the stars of the heart of the program this evening, Declaring Independence Then and Now. Our distinguished narrator is Jay Kaufman. Jay served... You don't know him already, okay. He served as Lexington State Representative on Beacon Hill for 24 years. While there, he noticed considerable room for improvement in the way we govern ourselves, and he launched Beacon Leadership Collaborative, a nonprofit offering workshops and coaching on leadership and citizenship in the public square. He also writes daily and publishes weekly essays on his Uncertain Times Substack page. Most importantly, he's a happy and lucky husband, father, grandfather, and Lexingtonian. Jacob. Speaker number 1 is Craig Sandler, current president of the Lexington Historical Society and managing partner of State House News. Speaker number 2 is Jamie Lee, immediate past captain commanding of the Lexington Minuteman Company. Jamie. Speaker number 3 is Sarah McDonough. She is our Society's program manager and one of our top historic house educators. Speaker number 4 is Chris Hurley, a member of the Lexington Minuteman Company, and he portrays Reverend Jonas Clark in our annual reenactment of Paul Revere's Ride. Speaker number 5 is Pat Costello. She is a longtime top member of our crack corps of museum educators. Even though she's moved from Lexington recently, she's still an important and regular part of all of our programming. Okay, Jay, it's all yours.
Thank you, Sue. Today, as much as any time in our history, it is critical to consider the state of the Union, to measure the vitality of our democracy, the health of our citizenry. As we gather here to revisit declaring independence a moment 248 years ago, it's not enough to recall history. We're called to mine the past for answers to today's important questions and challenges. The Declaration of Independence boldly professes what is and what could be. The Declaration announced the birth of a nation, one governed by and for the people, in order to secure liberty, equality, and justice for all. For 249 years, we have engaged to struggle to redeem these revolutionary promises. Today, the Declaration remains a remarkable document of what we as a nation seek to become. And this July 4th, we consider it as our nation lives through its latest crisis of democracy. Why was it written? Why is it radical? Let's go back to the spring of '76. The Continental Congress wanted assurances that each colony would support this risky endeavor. The colonies responded with the language of independence, the language they had heard over the previous 10 years of popular protest. In Massachusetts, John Adams and the legislature put the matter directly to the towns. Here is how Massachusetts towns responded.
Essex Journal, May 18, 1776. Resolved as to the opinion of this House that the inhabitants of each town in this colony ought, in full meeting, advise whether that if the Honorable Congress should, for the safety of said colonies, declare them independent of the Kingdom of Great Britain, they, the said inhabitants, will solemnly engage with their lives and fortunes to support them in this measure.
Across Massachusetts, people gathered in town meetings to debate the question. Each knew the meaning of engaging with their lives and fortunes. If they tried and failed to separate from Britain, they would face the penalties of treason, their property seized, their lives forfeited. Today, the results of their debates and votes survive in town meeting record books. Some towns simply affirmed their support, others drafted full-fledged town declarations of independence. And some, like Barnstable, whose coastline lay exposed to the world's most powerful navy, voted not to seek independence. Let us recover the words of these people of Massachusetts in 1776.
Lexington Town Meeting, Thursday, May 23rd, 1776. The town met, voted to refer the important matter relating to the independency of the colonies to the Honorable Continental Congress and strictly adhere to their resolutions and declarations about the momentous affair. And that if the said Congress should, for the safety of the colonies, declare them independent of the Kingdom of Great Britain, we stand ready with our lives and fortunes to support them in the measures.
Westford Town Meeting, June 14, 1776. It is our humble opinion that nothing short of a state of independency will so well answer for our safety, and in case the said Congress should declare a state of independency, we will advise thereto, and risk our lives and fortunes in support thereof.
In the town of Warwick, where the minister preached strenuously against independence, the town voted by yeas and nays. 38 names voted yea, and 44 more came in within 6 days and voted for independence, making a total of 82 yeas and not one in the negative.
Acted June 14th, 1776, at a general town meeting. The subverting of our Constitution, the many injuries and unheard of barbarities which these colonies have received from Great Britain, confirms us in the opinion that the present age will be deficient in their duty to God, their posterity, and themselves if they do not establish an American republic. We give them the strongest assurance that if they should declare America to be a free and independent republic, your constituents will support and defend the measure with their lives and fortune.
In active response, we see more than mere assent. In asserting their rights and grievances, they were following a model. The British people had a long tradition of respecting lawful authority. If a ruler was to be ousted for a new government, the reasons must be properly declared.
Malden, a Declaration of Independence, May 17, 1776. It is the ardent wish of our souls that America may become a free and independent state. A sense of unprovoked injuries will arouse the resentment of the most peaceful. Such injuries these colonies have received from Britain. Unjustifiable claims have been made by the king and his minions to tax us without our consent. These claims have been prosecuted in a manner cruel and unjust to the highest degree. They send fleets and armies to America, that by depriving us of our trade and cutting the throats of our brethren, they might awe us into submission and erect a system of despotism in America, which should so far enlarge the influence of the crown as to enable it to rivet their shackles upon the people of Great Britain. For these reasons, we are confirmed in the opinion that the present age will be deficient in their duty to God, their prosperity, and themselves if they do not establish an American republic.
More than 3/4 of Massachusetts towns drafted statements of independency that spring, almost all of them positive. Crafting, debating, and voting on these statements solidified support and mobilized towns. It primed the people for the Declaration of Independence. When the Continental Congress ultimately declared independence, word traveled fast. On July 14th, an express rider carrying the Declaration reached Worcester, where Isaiah Thomas waylaid him. The activist printer took the document to the steps of the meeting house and proclaimed it to the assembled crowds before allowing the rider to continue on to Boston. This marked the first time those memorable words were heard in Massachusetts. Public celebrations ensued.
Massachusetts Spy, Worcester, July 24th. On Monday last, a number of patriotic gentlemen of this town assembled on the green near the Liberty Pole, where the bells were set a-ringing and drums a-beating, after which the Declaration of Independency of the United States was read to a large and respectable body, who testified their approbation by repeated huzzahs, firing of musketry and cannon, bonfires, and other demonstrations of joy. The Sons of Freedom repaired to the tavern, where toasts were drunk, including perpetual itching without the benefit of scratching to the enemies of America.
In Boston, one of the Sons of Liberty read the Declaration from the old State House balcony to jubilant crowds below. Then the legislature ordered the document be proclaimed in every village and town.
In council, July 17, 1776, ordered that the Declaration of Independence be printed and a copy sent to the ministers of each parish within the state, and that they be required to read the same to their respective congregations and to deliver it to the clerks of the town, who are hereby required to record the same in their town books, there to remain as a perpetual memorial thereof.
When they heard the Declaration proclaimed in their towns in July of 1776, the people recognized the words as their own. The grievances expressed as trials they had experienced, and liberties asserted as their birthright. The Declaration announces an important change in government. It lays out the people's rights and shows how these rights have been violated. It declares that as a result of those violations, the ruler has broken his contract with the people and abdicated his authority. And finally, it announces the creation of a new government. What might they say in Westford, Warwick, Acton? What might we say here in Lexington? If gathered today to air our grievances, assert our rights, own our responsibilities as citizens, to be governed by men and women serving in our name, pursuing liberty and justice for all, and giving honor to the ideas and ideals of democracy. Consider that question as we turn our attention to the document itself. Hear that Declaration of Independence now, as it was heard proclaimed in Massachusetts in 248 years ago. The Declaration begins by announcing a great change in government. The reasons for this change must be clearly set forth for all, colonists, the British, and the whole world to understand.
In Congress, July 4th, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When, in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation.
Then, in the most memorable passage, the Declaration asserts the equality and universal right to liberty of all people and the responsibility of government to ensure these rights. Everything else in the Declaration flows from these extraordinary claims.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government. Laying this foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness.
The Declaration then professes the colonists' respect for established laws. However, those laws have been so repeatedly violated that to continue under the current government would amount to surrendering to tyranny.
Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government.
The longest portion of the Declaration details people's grievances, for it is these grievances that justify the overthrow of authority.
The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world.
We then hear 29 specific grievances against the King, Parliament, and the British people. They begin with actions taken by the King to obstruct, delay, and negate the colonial government, undermining the sovereignty of the people.
He has refused his essential laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained, and when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them.
They protest that the king, fearing large legislative bodies, had refused to allocate representatives to the growing frontier, denying settlers their rightful role in government.
He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only.
They protest punitive acts by king and parliament that hampered the meeting and business of colonial legislatures, again denying the people their rightful participation in government.
He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time, after such dissolutions, to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within.
All of these grievances point to one end. The king was obstructing the rule of law in order to silence the voice and the will of the people. The list of grievances continues. The king had banned settlement of the Ohio River Valley, limiting westward migration of the colonists, and in their minds, the right to secure their subsistence on new lands. He was thus obstructing prosperity and denying their pursuit of happiness.
He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states. For that purpose, obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands.
The king interfered with American courts of justice and diverted them from established rule of law and the pursuit of the common good.
He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries.
The king appointed despised tax collectors and customs agents to police American trade and to injure the economic well-being of the people.
He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance.
He had sent his army to harass and intimidate them.
He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power.
He allowed Parliament to impose laws upon the colonists and undermine the power of the people in their colonial legislatures.
He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation.
Parliament had punished their protests with a series of intolerable acts that violated their treasured rights as British citizens, and the government had laid Boston under siege. These measures lie behind the list of the colonists' most deeply felt grievances.
For quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses,
For abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies.
Perhaps most grievously, the colonists believed that king and parliament together conspired to strip them of their prized right of self-government. Constitutions were violated, laws abolished, even town meetings were banned.
For taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments. For suspending our own legislature and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in cases whatsoever.
By these abuses, the king had abandoned his role as their sovereign protector. He had become their enemy, at war with his own people.
He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation.
In that war, they asserted, the king was impressing American sailors into the British Navy and inciting Native Americans to attack the frontiers.
He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hand. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us, and has endeavored to bring the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions.
The king ignored all their appeals for justice.
In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people.
The British people, too, once held in warm affection, had abandoned the Americans to the abuses of king and parliament. In grief, the colonists were separated from their ancestral kin.
Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our emigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation, and hold them, as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends.
And so, it is necessary for these colonies to establish a new government with all the powers of governments among the nations of the world.
We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these United Colonies are by right to be free and independent states, that we are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do.
Finally, the people declare that to this new government they pledge their all.
And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
These words were proclaimed from pulpits, printed in broadsides, toasted in taverns. They responded to deeply felt grievances. They professed deeply held rights. They inspired people to risk their all to create a new nation, a nation dedicated to liberty and equality. Throughout our history, we have wrestled with fulfilling the Declaration's promise of liberty and equality. The challenges are with us still: to secure liberty, to ensure equality before the law, to provide the means for all to pursue their full potential and their happiness. The Declaration is a living document. It draws its vitality from each generation's pursuit of liberty and equality. We must consider the Declaration in the light of the present moment, and that means asking some uncomfortable questions. How are we doing in the pursuit of equality? What does it mean that in a presidential election year, fully half of us fail to vote, or when in local elections, 85% of us stay home? That more than half of the state legislators run for re-election unopposed? What does it mean when half the people believe the last presidential election was stolen, and the other half fears the next one is in the process of being stolen through voter suppression? Have we built a system where money overwhelms democracy? Is ours on Beacon Hill, as on Capitol Hill, a government for and by a few people at the top? And if so, what is our responsibility and what is our role as citizens? We hope you'll leave here tonight with those questions on your mind, and we encourage you to discuss them with those around you, your neighbors and family and fellow citizens. And just as importantly, we hope you'll listen with respect and an open mind to the views of others, perhaps most urgently to those whose views differ from yours. Let's continue and renew the American conversation.
And speaking of opposing views, there's not much around here in Lexington in 1776 that the king and his local representatives are not aware of.
Great.
So we were encouraged to invite one of those representatives this evening, and he has requested to make a few remarks. Major General William Howe.
I thank you for your closing remarks. I could not agree with them more. And in the spirit of an opposing viewpoint, I do want to make you aware that there are alternatives open to you. It's not too late to reconsider. I have brought with me, in response, a proclamation. I know that you love these so much. Thank you very much. We won't need the bayonet tonight. We're going to use logic on you tonight. By William Howe, Esquire, General and His Majesty's forces in America, and the King's Commissioner for restoring peace in His Majesty's colonies and provinces of North America. Do you hear something? A proclamation, whereas that bodies of armed men in open contempt of His Majesty's proffered clemency, do continue their opposition to the reestablishment of legal government, that diverse, ill-disposed persons and assemblies endeavor by various arts, pamphlets, and declarations to alienate the confidence and affection of His Majesty's subjects, defeat every plan of reconciliation, and to prolong the unnatural war between Great Britain and her colonies.
Just so.
We, in pursuance of His Majesty's most gracious intentions towards his subjects in the American colonies, declare that all persons speedily returning to their just allegiance are promised a free and general pardon and are invited to accept the blessings of peace and secure enjoyment of their rights, liberties, and properties upon the true principles of the Constitution. To the more effectual accomplishment of His Majesty's most gracious intentions, we do, in His Majesty's name, charge all persons who are assembled together in arms against His Majesty's government to disband themselves and return to their dwellings. We further declare that all persons armed, Barry, you'll love this part. We further declare that all persons bearing arms aforesaid, who shall come in with his arms before any officer of His Majesty's forces, shall receive the full value for them. Except you. We further command all persons assembled together under the name of general or provincial congresses, committees, conventions, etc., who execute orders for levying money, raising troops, or otherwise molesting His Majesty's subjects, to desist from all such treasonable acts and relinquish all such usurped authority, so that peace may be restored. And all the inhabitants of said colonies may avail themselves of His Majesty's paternal goodness in the preservation of their property, the restoration of their commerce, and the security of their most valuable rights under the just and moderate authority of the Crown and Parliament of Great Britain. Not quite. You see, they talk about debate. The rebellious war now levied is manifestly carried on to the purpose of establishing an independent empire. One need not dwell upon the fatal effects of such a plan. The object is too important, the spirit of the British nation too high, the resources with which God has blessed her too numerous to give up so many colonies which she has planted with great industry, nursed with great tenderness, encouraged with many commercial advantages, and protected and defended at much expense of blood and treasure. When the unhappy and deluded multitudes shall become sensible of their error, His Majesty shall be ready to receive the misled with tenderness and mercy, and to receive the submission of any province or colony which shall be disposed to return to its allegiance as if such province or colony had never revolted. Given this day at New York by command of His Excellency William Howe, God save the King! I didn't hear you. Now, isn't this reasonable as opposed to, well, yes.
Quite enough.
Yes.
As we prepare for our finale, I ask that the ice cream servers come forward, please, as well as the colonial singers for one more time. I would like to thank all of our participants this evening one more time. Special thanks to our audio person from Terry Hanley Audio. So we'll have the colonial singers come forward. We are going to end our program with the singers leading us in God Bless America, followed by free ice cream.
Free ice cream brought to you by His Majesty.
Not unless Your Majesty's name is Hoodsy. As many of you know, this building used to be a train depot. So those of you who would like ice cream, we ask you to go out on the platform and up to the ticket window to receive your ice cream. Now, again, this was a train depot. We do ask that you stay on the platform. It is unlikely that you will be hit by a train, but there are an awful lot of bicycle riders out there. So we ask you to be careful. So, Darlene, would you please lead us in God Bless America?